Delivering your whole life story, professional outstanding stories, in a 30-minute interview is a whole different ballgame from writing your essay. You need to prioritize the stories. You need to sort of come through with your life mission and all that.
Yeah, and Paula, it reminds me of like having enough dress rehearsals before the actual show. You don't want to just go to the show without preparation.
Eye contact is something so vital. You don't want to sort of deviate out of the scenario. You want to stay with the person all the time. And I remember in one of the interviews, a guy from one of the top schools looked at my client's resume and said, okay, it's poorly done. Well, what would you tell the guy? Well, tell me how to improve. He knew the question had nothing to do with his resume, but it was to disarm him. All interviewers will ask you, do you have any questions for me? You always do. You have questions about the program. You have questions about the process. Normally about the program is more interesting.
And so in case something goes wrong with your interview for whatever reason, and you think that you have not been given a fair chance, do not hesitate to reach out to the admissions folks as well.
Schools want to know. If you feel you've not been given a fair shake due to technology or at the rare occasion an inappropriate or alum interviewer, the schools want to know about it.
One thing I want to highlight, which is a little bit like pulling back, and I think we've said it the entire time we've been talking, which is, and it has been mentioned, but it's just been peppered in, which is that this is to go to leadership school. So all of the ways that you can present yourself as a leader, like it's all about showing up as the leader that you want to see yourself to be.
Hey, MBA hopefuls, we are live on the air with MBA Waves, talking all things business and education. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, which helps us continue to create all this great free content for you on your MBA journey. Today on episode 148, we are talking about interviewing from round one. And today what we're going to get into is everything you need to know about business school interviews, some of the best tips you can have to prepare for them, and some of the top mistakes you need to 100% avoid to be successful. I'm your host for today, Eric Lucrezia. As always, with my co-hosts Bara Sapir and Krithika Srinivasan. And today we have a special guest, one of our friends and colleagues, Paulo Cesar from Philadelphia Consulting, very logically based in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Go with his name, Paulo. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the show. What's going on?
Hey, Paulo, so nice to have you. Hey, everyone.
It's a pleasure to be here. Enjoy very much. Thanks.
Well, we're excited to have you. And hi, everyone.
Last time we saw Paulo and Bara was here in Paris for the AIGAC conference. And for those of you who don't know AIGAC, it's the Association of International Graduate Admissions Consultants. It is a great place to find an admissions consultant to work with. And you can check this out on aigac.org, AIGAC.org. All right, let's jump right into it. And let's talk about the elephant in the room, ChatGPT. All right, so with generative AI always casting a shadow on the written application, how much more significant, Paulo, I'm going to start with you, do you think the MBA interviews will be now?
Oh, absolutely. Every year with you, interviews are getting much more into the details of, are you really the character behind the application? And, after Wharton released that highly significant warn into using ChatGPT, with few interviewers are going to be much more into trying to understand, how much of your character building in your application was really your work or not. So I think more than ever, your fluency, positioning needs to be sharp, needs to be very coherent with your application, and you want to be more and more careful. We were even wondering if they're going to introduce a written essay in your interview, like INSEAD just recently did, about, you need to do your video interview and then you do a written essay. So what's going to happen? But more and more you need to be ready. And I'm sure there will be some more demanding questions for the applicants coming up. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, the thinking on the feet, kind of a check that they all want to do. And the worry that you may be fake and you're not authentic. So I think the interviews have always been a great way to do it. And this year, we're just going to see how much more emphasis is being laid on it.
And you use the word character, right? Like the character behind the person who's applying. And that's, how else can you really find the character except in almost nonverbal cues when you're with somebody? Right? It's not always the verbal. It's how the person is is being in that space in the interview.
Absolutely. And I'm sure, Mayor, I'm sure there would be new questions coming up. I remember some 15 years, 10 years ago, whatever, Chicago came up with very unusual questions opening the interview. What is your legacy? That was the first question. What is your legacy? Legacy, right? Well, what do you mean? So, and those questions had the purpose of really double checking, confirming your profile with your application. So I'm anticipating questions that will be completely new, totally different from what they've asked you in the application, so they can cross-check your consistency from your application into your answering. So let's hear them. It'll be interesting.
That's kind of like my second word, like not golden rule, but word for like what is the key to success after authenticity is consistency.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
When there's things that just don't add up, it looks fishy and it just creates suspicion, even when there very likely doesn't need to be any suspicion. You're not doing anything dishonest. You're not trying to hide something. You've just like not spelled it out right, and it looks weird. And someone who doesn't know you, I think it's a very human thing. When someone's telling you one thing here and the next day something else, you're like, hang on, this doesn't check out. It creates a lack of trust. And I think that's absolutely what we want to do with the admissions committee is to create trust.
Yes.
So, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
No, and interviewers are more and more aware of what they need to do. They become so, they've always been professional, but in the past few years, there's a refinement in the sense of, let me really understand this whole person. So it's much more demanding than it was before. So we need to be consistent all the way through.
So, Paulo, this is kind of like segueing into knowing the importance of it. How do you prepare to stand out in an MBA admissions interview? What do you think are some ingredients that have to change now? Okay.
I have these 3 pillars that I tell my clients, applicants, when they're getting ready. And the first one is content mastery. Delivering your whole life story, professional, outstanding stories, in a 30-minute interview is a whole different ballgame from writing your essay. Okay, I know my story, I know it very well, I'm gonna make it through. No. It's a whole different positioning in the sense that, you need to prioritize the stories, you need to sort of come through with your life mission and all that. So if you don't have a good content mastery there in the process, you will have a problem. And that goes with your impactful delivery. Have you practiced well enough? So content mastery, how to prepare my contents now in an interview mode. That's a very important issue. Impactful delivery, it comes with practice, comes with really working with the details of your story. So, you feel completely lined up with all that you need to transmit into the application. You're not going there just to answer questions. No, you're going there to make a point about who you are. If you simply answer the questions, you didn't do your job. You're there to position yourself. So content mastery, impactful delivery is just so much important. Let me practice well enough. That's why I tell students they need to practice intensively with all that, and I can go into more details. And the last pillar that I tell students is readiness. Achieving readiness in the interview. You don't want the interview to be the final checkpoint of whether you're ready for the interview. No, you want to, way before you go to the interview, you want to be ready for that. And achieving the level of readiness is when you have practiced enough. You have the fluency that whatever comes your way, you're ready to answer. You're ready to make your whole person there come through. So readiness is something very important. When I watch the Olympics and Rebecca Andrade from Brazil that got the golden medal, when she hit that final gymnastics solo performance, she was ready. She was happy. She was just, it's my time now to really shine. And she delivered the gold. It was amazing. You need to achieve that level of readiness in your interview preparation, absolutely. But I can go more into details.
I just have to add on to what you said, Paulo, because this past 10 days has been the Paralympics here in Paris after the traditional Olympics. And besides that, there was so much going on that was connected to it. And one of the things I got to see was a friend of mine who is been in a wheelchair. It's a remarkable story because he was a dancer for the Paris Opera Ballet. And he had something happen where he ended up in a wheelchair. And just to go from here, somebody who has extreme mastery of his own body to somebody who's now in a wheelchair, has really done amazing things since then. Taken ownership of the situation and being positive. And he does a lot of like trainings at companies, like kind of like handicap sensibilization, I should say. And he's a choreographer too. And so he choreographed this show. There's a woman, I was wondering if you heard of her. She's from Sao Paulo as well. Victoria Bueno, does that ring a bell? You were speaking about the Olympics and the athletes and so on. And she's a kind of an athlete. She's a dancer. She's a ballet dancer from Sao Paulo who was born with no arms. And she did the most incredible performance here in Paris. Does that ring a bell?
Yes, I saw her. Yes,
yeah, and that kind of like tenacity and vulnerability also, I think that really helps connect with people just as much on the field or the stage as with an interviewer.
Absolutely. I think achieving readiness is something that most of you, I'm sure most of you have done with your essays. When the essays are ready, you feel, okay, I've done my best. This is totally represents me. Achieving that in your interview preparation is a whole different ballgame. It's very demanding, and a lot of people fail on that. So creating an impactful delivery of your story, it takes time. It takes practice. It takes dedication. And a lot of students are tired. I just finished, submitting my 7-8 applications, and then I'm totally tired. Okay, no, you need to switch gears and go into your preparation. Interview preparation right away. Those who apply to the catalog, in 2 weeks, you're probably going to be interviewing. 2 or 3 weeks. They're very quick on the game. So, you're going to receive your email there. So you want to be totally on the game to do that.
Yeah, and Paulo, it reminds me of like having enough dress rehearsals before the actual show. You don't want to just go to the show without preparation. And
Absolutely.
the preparation and practice is separate from dress rehearsal. I would love to hear more about what are the ways that you get your clients ready?
Sure. In content mastery, we normally draw a matrix of the main questions that are asked per university. Now you can easily Google that. You can Google all the questions that were asked in the different universities in the past year, and the questions will slightly change, but it gives you a pretty good idea of the pathway of the whole story that they're looking for in terms of interview. So get familiar with those questions. That's the first thing, and then develop a matrix for each one of those schools. There will be a lot of similar things, but we develop a matrix of possible questions and answers for each one of the schools, and then we tailor to the culture of the school. A lot of people, they go to interview in Kellogg and they think, okay, I need to show a lot of my professional accomplishments, when a lot of the interview in Kellogg is connecting to the interviewer, building rapport, and showing who you are and what is important for you outside of your work. That's almost as important as your professional development. So understanding the types of questions, the types of culture that the school is actually focusing in during the interview is very important. So we developed the matrix, and the students enjoy doing that. It's not difficult because it's based on your story, and they need to develop a 10-point plot why they want to go to the schools. Okay, why I want to go to Kellogg. Okay, develop a 10-plot framework about why you want to go to. Why 10? Why is it too many? No, it's not. When you start, you're not gonna be telling the interviewer why you want to go to Kellogg only when he asks you to. You're going to start by telling your connection with the school, and then you're going to be through the interview showing how much you've connected with students, the webinars you've watched, specifically how the classes are going to help you with your career goals. So it's a whole development there that needs to be with you before you go to the interview. So very important to be able to develop that. And then I tell students, once you have, connecting with alums is vital. It has always been vital for the writing essays, even more vital now for the interview process. A lot of alums will even help you And I tell students, practice with your friends, practice with alums. They will run a mock interview with you. So that's important. But then engaging in I tell students, record yourself, listen to yourself. And if you listen to your recording, you're going to say, well, man, I was so boring during this delivery. What was that, right? And then do a self-assessment. You know when you're doing well, when you're not. So before actually, getting a coach to help you, and we have a couple of coaches that will help students, specifically in terms of, okay, let me see if you're ready. Before getting to the coach, do your job. Don't let the coach destroy you. Boy, you're not going to pass with this kind of delivery. So, there's a lot you can do. And then start practicing and start really building that development. It's very important.
That's great advice, Paulo. Yes, there's a lot of homework to be done on the part of the applicant. There's a question that's just come in. How long does it take to prep a candidate?
To prep a candidate?
Yeah. The way it's worded, it sounds like it's specifically asking you, how long does it take for you and your company to prep a candidate?
Yeah. Well, that goes from, are you interviewing for Kellogg or Harvard, right? So Harvard is a whole different ballgame. You need to practice. You need to display a phenomenal fluency in terms of switching from topics all the way through. You need to position yourself very well in terms of content. So there's a whole thing. So it takes a much more time. But on average, students, they need, if you're under pressure, in maybe 10 days, 2 weeks, you can be ready. But you need to practice daily. You need to set up your plot. You need to set up your story or the whole flow of the stories. You need to practice, and then once you feel you're good, you have a coach evaluate you. A coach can run a half an hour, 45-minute interview, and then discover what are the flaws, inconsistencies you need to work on. Then you shape those up, and then you come for another interview. And then when we interview students, we go, recommend, do not recommend, recommend with reservations. What are your weaknesses? What do you need to work on? And then we give them, the assessment, and then they shape up. Of course, some students we require a little bit more because they're not, it doesn't come easy for them to interview, so they need a little more work. But we normally, do whatever they need to. You don't want to go to an interview underprepared. Absolutely. You need to get the highly recommend. I highly recommend you. If you get just I recommend you, mark, among the competition, you're probably not going to make it. You need to shine into the process. So it's very important. What I really recommend for internationals, and I'm very much familiar with the Brazilian pool here. Eye contact is something so vital. I think it has gotten better through the years because of Zoom, but a lot of students, they go into an interview and they sit there answering questions, and then when a difficult question comes up, well, let me think. Okay, let me think here what I should say or something. Instead of staying with the interviewer right there, looking into his eyes and said, okay, well, great question. You don't want to sort of deviate or sort of fly away a little bit out of the scenario. You want to stay with the person all the time. So eye contact is very important. A lot of people are observing how they are looking into the game instead of looking into the camera. So eye contact is something very important. And we got a lot of students that are not as strong at this, and some people, they have a harder time being more assertive and compelling. They don't want to sound fake. So a few nuances we need to adjust there. And some students, get very intimidated. So some students need more practice because, how am I going to stand out during my interview? So all that needs to be discovered earlier in the game so we can help you with the process. So that's one of those things.
A bunch of stuff has come up for me as you guys have been speaking. One of them is, I didn't even realize when we planned this episode that we're going to have like this debate tonight here in the United States. I don't know if you've been, I don't know that you would have been following it, but like, it's been really interesting because people have been talking about how Kamala Harris has been preparing for a debate, which is an interview, right? She's basically being interviewed And in a debate, it's a similar process. And the other candidate, who won't be mentioned, has not necessarily we're hearing that he's not really preparing as much. And so it's a really interesting thing, because for this, you want to be able to speak on your feet, but when you're dealing with your entire future, you do want to prepare, which is exactly, Paulo, what you're talking about. And what struck me also was that if people have time and they know they're going to be applying to business school, they can take an improvisation class, they can take a like Toastmasters class, just to be able to be more comfortable in speaking. And I think that improv would actually be a really amazing process of thinking on one's feet, and also to be able to bring in different aspects of your personality, not just, serious and getting the serious, like really being able to lean into more like comedic. How do you bring the empathy out? How do you act? But it's not acting, it's being authentic, but really feeling into it in a much more comfortable way. Because with improvisation, you never know where things are going to go, right? So I think that would be. Have you expressed any of that to your clients? You've got time, take an improvisation class, take an acting class, or has that been something that's come up for any of you?
That's a great suggestion. I think some people, they cannot loosen up during the interview, and they have a hard time. And my students, way back in the past, told Paulo, all I do is just drink a couple of beers and I'll be ready to go, right? Okay, yeah, you don't want to rely only on the beers, okay? But you want to loosen up. So yeah, I think for Wharton group dynamics interview, we normally have the group dynamics, and before we actually go into the prompt of this year prompt, we do a game ahead of time about asking very challenging professional and personal questions to the audience to see how they.
Here's an example.
Okay, like tell us about the most interesting relationship you had. What was the good and the bad about it? And as soon as they're so embarrassed right away, and that's the whole purpose, and then after 15 minutes into the game, everybody's like, I better either join this or I don't know, right? And then they release themselves. They get, they open up and all that. And then we get to a level I said, okay, this is a great level of authenticity. You need to let go, because, when you face a group that you're not familiar with, you need to participate. So we do those games. Yeah, we come up with very interesting questions. And then after that, after everybody is sort of loosen up, okay, we go into the whole prompt. And for some students, it's just a deal breaker. They need a kind of a push to be able to feel comfortable in front of a group, in front of an audience. And when you practice, I always tell you, practice with as many different people as you can, in terms of, but some people will be harder on you. If you practice with the same person, it's not gonna do you good. I normally get my clients at the end after they've practiced, and I know them well. So I have a set of questions that I know will get them out of the comfort zone right from the beginning. And I just want to see how they handle. If they don't answer, they don't have a perfect answer, but they handle well, oh, that's a win. So, prompt is amazing. Yeah, I'm amazed how Kamala Harris grew in her power of speech. And that's very comforting, to see that. And she, the latest interviews, when you listen to her, it's amazing how she's done that. So
she's been practicing. It's been strange because for the last 4 years as vice president, we've kind of not heard from her. And I've been wondering, is she just kind of like taking this backseat role, or she been pushed into the closet, as they say in French? I'm translating. What's the deal? And maybe it was strategic. So knowing that at some point she would be running, they would have less fodder to criticize her for, less, as Donald Trump likes to do, sorry for mentioning his name, but like this childish mockery of like playing like name games or whatever, like a 2-year-old, or maybe like a 10-year-old. Yeah, maybe that's part of it. I think most people would prepare for a debate in high school. For the president of a country, you would definitely prepare for a debate. The orange guy has pretty much gone with the approach that, like, I like to go off the cuff, think on my feet, and I think the kind of things he has to say appeals to a lot of his audience. So that's fine if that works for him. But what I have heard is now he is starting to prepare because he's facing something that he doesn't know, a strong woman or someone who's not afraid to stand up against him. On the other side, Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, has been preparing a lot. She's been preparing with the same consultant that's worked with Hillary Clinton 4 years or 8 years ago. Crap, time is flying. Which is a gentleman, I don't know his name, but as I understand, like he is able to imitate the voice of her opponent, wears this kind of big boxy suit and sort of dresses the part. And this is what he did for Mrs. Clinton and is doing for Harris right now. And I think that's hilarious. So my biggest advice to clients is find out what the admissions director wears and get your friend to dress up.
Wear a sweatshirt with the school on it.
Eric, that's a contribution to the rumor mills now. They're going to be spinning.
Oh, yes.
You know what?
The devil wears Prada.
I was also thinking with what Paulo said, that like if his clients and if all of your clients are saying, I'm better with a couple beers, that's a really fun assignment too. Okay, imagine you've had a couple beers. Imagine you've had 4 beers. Now let's do the interview as if you're drunk, right? And that would be a really interesting thing. And it's like if they were, nope, you've had 4 beers. You wouldn't talk like that. Just to kind of just play with that.
Well, get them to film it. If they're so hung up on like, I would do better a little bit buzzed or drunk. All right, let's do it. Let's film it. And then you watch it and tell me what you think.
Yeah.
You may be slurring your words a bit more than you realize, you know?
Yes. Yeah. The students, they take a while to realize this is the interview of a lifetime. This is your big moment right here before going into one of those top schools, you know. So this is major. This is major, like running for presidency, right? Major. So you really need to excel here in the process. One of the things I tell students here, get to know your interviewer as much as you can. You know, like Kellogg and Chicago, they will use the whole network of alums in Brazil, so you know exactly with who you're going to interview. So Google the guy. Do your homework. Okay, I'm interviewing with a guy from McKinsey or a guy from the financial world here. You know, study the guy and all that. So I have this funny story about this guy that he was very good at wine tasting. He's taken several courses on wine and winery and all that. And the interviewer was also a very good guy at that. You know, he was part of a wine club in Brazil and all that. And he said, okay, let me sharpen up here to be able to interview with this guy. And he was a very, very seasoned person from the financial market. And sure enough, right, when interview, and I'll talk a little bit about your resume. You need to be sure you polish your resume for your interview and be sure that your interviewer has your resume. If you're not interviewing with an admissions officer, with an alum, be sure he has your resume ahead of time. But in the beginning of the interview, the guy asked him, okay, well, so you are also well versed in wine. Good. What wine would you suggest for our interview right now? And my student said, well, I would not suggest any wine because we're interviewing. But after the interview, yes, I would suggest such and such and such, which normally served, after meetings and all that. Well, he won the guy right there. Okay. So, he knew a little bit of the guy's background and he was ready to imprompt like Bara.
Well, I have 2 questions for you from what you're saying there. One, just to give our audience a little bit more context, right? You mentioned might be being interviewed by an alum. I think in the case of professional staff interviewing you, they would likely have your file in front of you. They may not have your essays. Some schools do what they call blind. You're being blind, which means they wouldn't have the essays and the other things. They might just have your profile or just your resume or CV. Alumni, on the other hand, might not. So how would you go about making sure the alumni has your CV prior to the interview?
Right, yeah. I used to call those behavioral and informational interviews, and you need to be fully aware of what you're going into. Informational interviews, the ones that, the interviewer doesn't actually know your story. And he knows you've been selected to interview, so you've you've advanced well in the process. Like Chicago, would got around 70-75% of the Brazilian pool before the interview. So he knows you made the cut, you really well, but he doesn't know anything about you. He knows you're good, but so very important to be able to be sure that your resume is really, maybe you need some updating, maybe you need a little bit of refinement there. And when you connect with the interviewer and set up the interview time, send in the resume. And if you're meeting him personally, which doesn't happen anymore, almost ever is normally Zoom, right? Be sure you take the resume with you, because he wants to know that. Normally they begin with your resume. And the classical question that all those informational interviews will ask you is, walk me through your resume, right? Walk me through your resume. There needs to be a 3-4 minute, run through your resume in terms of main highlights, so you can go into the interview. You need to have that very well prepared, very well sharpened in terms of being ready. Behavioral interviews, when you interview with somebody from the admissions office, Harvard is like that, MIT is like that. And then they've read your application, they know you well. They may want to ask you specific questions about your story. You just want to double check a few things, or maybe I want to confirm a few things. So you be ready to be pushed against the wall right there. Okay. Well, the guy was 5-7 minutes the same story. He didn't understand. No, he wanted to double check the consistency of your story, the way you actually had it in your essay, the way you were articulating. So you need to to visit your application and be sure, what are some of the possible questions that are going to be asked. Behavioral interviews are much more demanding, and it's the next level, because besides those checking those stories, they're going to be asking probably other stories to be able to cross-check consistency there. So they're much more demanding, right? So, but you want to be sure, first of all, what kind of interview you're going into to be able to get ready. And I remember in one of the interviews, a guy from one of the top schools looked at my client's resume and said, okay, resume, you just gave it to me. It's poorly done. I don't like this resume. He began the question with this prompt. Well, what would you tell the guy? What would you tell the guy that asks you that?
Yeah.
Kind of hard, right? My student was very seasoned, so he said, okay, well, tell me how to improve. I'm all ears here. Let's improve it. He knew the question had nothing to do with his resume and was to disarm him. And funny enough, when you interview with alums, sometimes that happens. That's not part of the script, but they love to throw you kind of a question there just to see how you react. And in Brazil, we have so much competition among the soccer teams, and of course, the good soccer teams are all São Paulinos, which is my team, the best team in the world. But of course, there's so much competition, and I tell my students, don't go into a discussion. The guy doesn't want to compete with you, so just be ready to talk about your team and to hear about his team and all that. It's not the time for that. But be ready for questions that have the purpose to really see how you react under pressure, and be ready to go around that. Look for the curveball and know how to get out of it and go into the interview. So.
Yeah, for sure, especially alumni, because they come from a different position, right? They're not professional staff who are making sure they're putting together a balanced class, diverse, that can handle the academics, that are employable, all that stuff. No, these people, the alumni, they want to know, are you my tribe? Like, are you the kind of person I want to call my alumni brother or sister, kind of? Am I going to work well with you as a fellow alumni community member? So they have a different motivation, and totally they're going to drop those questions to it's like playing the big brother. It's like testing you kind of thing. But there was the second question I wanted to ask you, Paulo. What would you say to a client who says to you, okay, I know who's going to be interviewing me. I can totally look them up on LinkedIn, but I don't want them to see that they've looked at that I've looked at their profile. You know how on LinkedIn you can see? So what do you tell them?
Yeah, you want to be careful. And a lot of students, it's so funny. A lot of students ask me, Paulo, I'm interviewing with this guy and I'm friends with a very friend of him. maybe I'm going to tell my friends to tell him that I'm very good and brief him ahead of time. So don't do that. Don't do briefings at all. On the other hand, it's quite common to check people on LinkedIn. They know they all do that. So it's okay to double check the guy to see his background. That's part of the homework. And maybe you have other people that you know that have worked with him, and it's good. And I have a lot of alums that interview, and we normally give them the overall guy's profile just in terms of helping the students. So I think it's part of the homework.
I do too, but I'm also American, and you are American by the bigger picture sense. I find that Europeans, I think it's just very much cultural. Europeans, they really tend to, it feels like they're stalking, and they don't want to do that kind of thing, where Americans are like, I'm here. Like, but I think it's doing your homework. It shows like preparedness. It's like being a scout, right? You're prepared. And without even clicking on their name, you just do the search, and then like the list of possible matches comes up on LinkedIn, right? You're searching for Tommy Smith, right? And then a bunch of Tommy Smiths come up, and then you can see, oh, this one who has the face that looks like my interviewer, that one has like 3 mutual connections. Let's see who those. You can just click on the mutual connections first, like, oh, looks like he went to school with Mary, like amazing, like, and so you have like points in common, and any common ground that you can leverage to build a relationship and trust and connection and all of those things that make us human are gold.
Even hobbies, right? Like even hobbies. Like if you find that someone's or charities or
groups, like, interests, all that.
Yeah, I mean, on my LinkedIn, I've got my professional stuff and then dog advocate, right? So if someone were to look me up, they'd be like, "Oh, what's that about?" And then you can. But yeah, I'm very Googleable, admittedly. But.
Absolutely, I tell my students they have to be very energetic. During their interviews, they have to release energy, who they are, what they do. If you just simply have a very cold conversation, there's no exchange of appreciations, of empathy, you're not doing your job. And for some students, it's a little harder to release energy. How do you release energy during an interview, Bara? You tell me, because you're all about energy. So tell me.
I mean, I would think that you want to go in and you want to have a calm disposition, right? Mm-hmm. And the way that you would release any kind of extra energy, everyone, they're going to be different, right? Like some people, you should exercise before, like you want to exert it that way. Other people might want to get a massage, right? So other people can do some sort of self-hypnosis, if that's their jam. But you really want to figure out what's your desired state when you go into the interview.
You said 2 differently kind of seemingly opposing things. You talked about energy, Paulo. You talked about Bara's book about calm. And I think both are really important. As a leader, I think one of the key traits is remaining calm in any situation. That like crisis happens and you absorb it like a sponge and you just give out like wisdom or like directives or advice or whatever is needed, but you keep that internal. Never let them see you sweat. And the second, and doesn't mean not being authentic, but not letting them see you panic, I should say. And the second thing about being energetic, I think that, if you're going for an MBA, you're training to be a leader, right? Top leader in business. And you need to be able to inspire a team. So if the person on the other side of the screen, or if it's in person, the desk, the table, is feeling like, what a snoozer, like, let's face it, more and more of our meetings and interactions are this way on a screen. And so like you have, if that feels uncomfortable for you, get used to it and get better at it, because like you need to be able to transmit that energy digitally, I guess is the way to say.
One way I would say is to be present. Because a lot of the time people are hung up on the outcome, saying that, oh, I need to get through this. Somebody told me this was so important. And if I don't get this one, I'll be waitlisted and I can't afford it. So if you're going on running those kind of scenarios in your head without actually answering the question or letting the nervousness away, that is a challenge too. So just be present and think of it as a normal conversation where you're completely curious about this great person who is a representative of the school and who can tell you more about the school, who can also help you learn to see whether you want to go to the school as well. So keeping it that way would also help.
I like how you said that, Krithika, because when a lot of people hear being present, they're like, well, what the hell does that mean exactly? Like, it just sounds like I am present, I'm here. But the way you said it, it's like focusing on the outcomes instead of like focusing on the conversation and answering the question, but also asking good questions. It's a very good description. I feel like a lot of people are, like you said, obsessed with the outcomes and want to be able to calculate some kind of specific percentage of likelihood they're going to be admitted. And this drives me bonkers. I was like, you cannot calculate this. I was like, stop trying to figure it out. Stop trying to crack the code. Stop trying to beat the system. It's not going to happen. And it's irrelevant. You focus on being the best version of yourself you can be, whether it's your essays, the GMAT, the interview, whatever. By the way, employee and leader. And that's what gets you in. There is no magic number. Doesn't exist. And it's irrelevant. So like, stay present, as Krithika said. Thank you.
You know, the recent interview that Kamala Harris gave, I forgot, I think it was with Dana Bash of CNN, was a masterclass on being interviewed. Mm-hmm. They asked her a question about, Trump questioning her identity. And instead of diving into it, she was like, same playbook, next question, right? Yeah. I mean, and so like, it was such a powerful stance. I think we're going to see more of that tonight. We're going to see, I think, different ways of just not getting into the weeds. So if someone says something to you in an interview, what happens if they say something that is against your politics or can like lure you in? I mean, I don't think that's not their goal, but let's just say they say something like, oh, how was your weekend? And they're like, well, I went hunting. And like, you're like an animal advocate and you're like, oh my God, they went hunting, right? Like having the way of just not going down a path that's going to make things uncomfortable or worse. I think that watching her last weekend was just a masterclass in dealing with this particular scenario.
Yeah, I mean, being aware of your triggers is definitely good in life as a mature adult, as a leader, as a, all of those things. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's a fine line between a behavioral interview where they may say something that's going to disarm you and a question that's just inappropriate that you just are not comfortable answering. It's against your values and you're going to set it aside. So look, in the context of an MBA interview, they're in control. I always say you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. And that's true because it is about finding the right mutual fit, but they're in control. So obviously you can't be rude. You don't want to make it awkward. But if something comes up that is just like, for some reason, it's unlikely, but if it does happen, you could say, I would prefer to focus on my leadership position, or you could just change the conversation somehow and talk about something positive without reacting, without attacking the person back. Because at the end of the day, they're going to write some kind of thing down that's going to determine your admission or not. Mm-hmm. So that's what I would say to that. There's a couple of questions that came in, and I don't want to ignore them. There was one I had up on the screen, but we didn't get to it. If you don't mind, I'm going to ask on behalf of Ariolua, what's a good approach towards introducing yourself beyond your resume and application? Starting with Paulo, if you don't mind.
Okay. You want to, I tell students, when you go into an interview, you want to be sure that you answer the questions well, first of all, but also that you sort of transmit your message there about yourself, And if the guy is very much by the book interviewer, he's just had a series of questions there, and you see you're not going to have a lot of room to be able to tell things you want to tell, you want to be sure that through the answers, you will always add up the extra detail that you want to talk about yourself. Some other interviewers are even, they're much more open about, they begin, walk me through your resume, talk about yourself, and I always find it very important that you have a wrap-up of your profile, well-trained, well-rehearsed in your mind there. What kind of person you are, what kind of professional you are, your career goals, how you fit with the school. Those are very important contents that you need to have in your mind that, you're going to transmit that through the answers, or maybe you have an opportunity to talk about yourself there into the process. Have in mind that you have very important stories and life accomplishments that need to come, that need to be said during the interview. If the guy doesn't ask them, you want to be sure that you talk to, transmit those to the interviewer normally interviewers are very, very well trained, so they're going to hit all the main points. But at the end of the interview, normally you have some time to talk about some things you haven't talked to, and always be ready to asking good questions to the interviewer. All interviewers will ask you, "Do you have any questions for me?" You always do. You have questions about the program. You have questions about the process. Normally, about the program is more interesting. Some students get very anxious, and they actually do. They end the interview. "You have any questions for me?" "Yes." "When am I going to get an answer?" "Do you think I did okay in the interview?" So you don't want to ask silly questions there, but you want to ask questions about the program. You want to ask questions about maybe the the alums and the club of alums in Brazil and all that. So have good questions prepared there for the.
That's really good advice, Paulo. He also, speaking about introducing, you mentioned earlier, like at the beginning, like kind of introducing yourself and walking them through your interview. You said something like a 3 to 4 minute intro. Do you systematically encourage your clients to go for 3 to 4 minutes, or does that depend on the school, or do you say like give a little bit and let them ask for if they want more? What is your approach on this?
Yeah. It used to, the walk me through your resume introductory narrative used to be 6-7 minutes in the past. I don't know what happened, right? We've all got this sense of urgency. Right now, they recommend 3 to 4 minutes. So we normally go with that. And students need to be, ready to impromptu there. Maybe I can speak a little longer, depending on the guy's flexibility. I'm sensing that he's eager to jump into the next question, so he'll wrap up in 3-4 minutes. Oh, he's enjoying it.
Read the room, like look at their face, their body language. What's the energy?
Right.
If they're leaning in, they probably want to know more. Like you can tell from their face if they're like, "Give me more," because I don't get what you're talking about. I'm losing my voice. Sorry.
You need to be pro at that. They practice with their with the coaches that we have and all that. And then I normally tell them, okay, send me a 4-minute recording about walking through your resume, about your life mission and all that. And they sent me the recording, and I said, "Oh, this is still not exciting enough. Let's work on that." So we do a lot of double checking with students, and normally, and I do it a lot with my students. And normally, when I feel there's a weakness there, I ask them to prepare, send me to me and to the coach or to both of us. Send us a recording on that topic. I want to be sure that you flow nicely, you're enthused, and you're ready to go here. So you want to just be careful. Absolutely. Interviewing with alums, most of the time, it's a positive experience. Unfortunately, through the years, some alums have not performed as well as we would like to. So you want to be ready to adjust to the alums' demand. Some interviews in the past, alums were very much in a hurry. They had half an hour. They were ready to wrap up. So my student, okay, he was expecting the nice conversation. No, he's hit the ground running with this guy because he's ready to go and all that. So be ready to adjust to the interviewer there. Some interviewers have all the time. Okay, they can stay with you for 45 minutes and still 15-minute chats. That's fine. So be ready to adjust there and try to read the guy as early as possible by Googling the guy and all that. And it's a funny story about Googling the guy. I had a guy that didn't want people to know that he was actually looking at their profile. So he had his mom doing all the Googling. So this older lady checking on everybody. It was so funny, and double checking and writing down all their names, and to be able to get information to the side. So it was funny. I said, what would those guys think? Maybe she was a human resources headhunter that was after them or something.
Like that. I assume she had a different last name. It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
You just kind of supported It Takes a Village for people to get into an MBA program, including the mom. Yeah, so I like to tell people that the first couple minutes or 3-4 minutes is like the trailer. You want to give them something so that they poke you into it, or ask you deeper, or say hey, show me that scene of your life or something. So you really want it to be a trailer of multiple things that they can pick on in the conversation. And to really to speak to the alum interviewers and others, they're all trained. So most of the time, the school will train them and everything else. But like it always happens with people, they could have had a bad hair day or something else. So just don't blame it on them or the school, but note that um, in case you have a bad interview experience, do feel free to contact the school. It's okay to say that, hey, this happened and possibly I wasn't so very happy about it, or something happened here. Okay, if something goes wrong that you felt wasn't right for you. To give you an example of what it is, like one of my candidates was supposed to be interviewed at a time. It got changed like all of a sudden by the other person, and it was like around 3 in the morning or something, and they had like a technical shutdown happen. So they wrote to the school to say like, hey, this happened, and the school did pair them with another alum who was available to have that conversation. So in case something goes wrong with your interview for whatever reason, and you think that you have not been given a fair chance, do not hesitate to reach out to the admissions folks as well.
Absolutely. Schools want to know, keep in mind that the alumni, they're not making decisions. They're filling out some kind of rubric form at the end, some kind of notes that they hand off to the admissions office for them to put in the file and make a collective decision. If you feel you've not been given a fair shake due to technology, or at the rare occasion an inappropriate or unaccommodating alum interviewer, the schools want to know about it so they can not have that person be involved in the process in the future, first of all, and second of all, to give you someone else to interview with, because they want to make sure you've had a fair shake. But what about, we only have a couple of minutes left. We've been really rambling on with lots of great information and great anecdotes, so I hope this has been helpful to everyone. But I want to ask, before we wrap up today, Paulo, starting with you, what are some pitfalls you think people should avoid? What are some no-nos, some things you don't want to do?
Right. A lot of people and as I mentioned before, you want to be well-versed in why you want to go to Michigan, why you want to go to Kellogg. And that is really creating a narrative of the main points of the school with your needs, career needs, personal needs. You want to intertwine them into a nice flow of connection, of displaying fit. And a lot of people don't do that well. And on the other hand, interviewers are so much into, has this guy really prepared or not? So, a few of my students in the past that had not prepared well, and they were actually elaborating why you want to go to Ross. And the guy said, well, that's what everybody tells me, But beyond that, why you want to come to Ross, right? Yeah, I'm not doing well in my interview, right? So you want to get to that level of that, you speak in the same language of the alum in terms of why you want to go to the school. So that's a major issue there. So you want to be careful with that, that why the school, when that is asked. Not all schools will ask you why you want to go there. And articulating your career goals has been always tricky, because career goals were set and done in the past. Now that everybody's flexible, so you want to be careful with the way you actually line up your life story and career goals. Articulating career goals is one of the most important things. I find it very defining for some schools like Columbia. So you want to be sure that everything is well explained, and why you switch in industry, position, country, because the guy is going to put you against the wall. Okay, you've never done that in your life. What makes you think you're going to make it, right? Of course, you're going to go through Columbia to do it, but you want to be well versed in the kind of answer, so people don't feel, okay, this is a not very convincing explanation. So you want to be careful.
The comment from the peanut gallery, our friend Marlena Corcoran says, above all, don't ask the interview, how did I do? What are my chances? Yeah, kind of cringe, awkward.
There's always 42.
Yeah.
Students get so anxious. I had a few students in the past, and I tell them not to do so. Okay, they finish the interview, they're walking out of the office. You think I'm gonna make it? Do you think they're gonna accept me? No, there's not time to do that. So,
to wrap it up, Paulo, what about some follow-up post-interview? Any final suggestions?
Well, that's a great question. So follow-up, post-reflection interviews, like, the classic one being from HBS. post-reflection interview is not for you to add things. You wanna have told the guy, but you didn't. No, it's to refine some of the answers you provided that were not at its best. So, when you're elaborating your post-reflection interview, double check your answers. Some of them were right on target. I just had it all there. Some of the answers I sort of was not my best answer, and I could have elaborated a little further in this or that. So the post-reflection interview should address those issues there. A lot of people want to, sort of bring a lot of other topics there. No, that's not the purpose. So that's the main heart of a post-reflection answer there. So you want to be careful with that. So
one thing I want to highlight, which is a little bit like pulling back, and I think we've said it the entire time we've been talking, which is, and it has been mentioned, but it's just been peppered in, which is that this is to go to leadership school. So all of the ways that you can present yourself as a leader, the empathy, the holding yourself accountable and being present, even saying, whoops, wait, let me say that differently. Like, it's all about showing up as the leader that you want to see yourself to be. Post-interview reflections, like, it's all an opportunity, and the entire process is an opportunity to show up as the leader that you want to be, and that they're going to see, oh wow, like the school can make this person, help them get to the next level, and we're excited about that, right? So it's I'm always so struck with these episodes where it's like, yep, it's leadership school again. How are you going to be a leader? How are you going to show up as the leader that you want to be? So I'm struck by that again.
Absolutely. And I think, it has been on for the last decade, and even more so in the last 5 years after pandemic. You need to display an inclusive mindset as a leader as ever before. The role of the MBA is to advance society in terms of inclusion, and this is top of the priority there. If you're not involved in any inclusive practice, helping others, mentorship, you're not going to make an impression. That's something that you really want to, you probably gone there already because of if you got to the point of application, but you also want to display that during the interview, your willingness to be very inclusive in doing so in your daily routine of professional life and extracurricular as well.
Absolutely. Guys, this has been fantastic. Paulo, thank you so much for all your time, wisdom, experience, and stories. It's been great. Guys, if you like today's episode, don't forget to give us a like and be sure to subscribe and click that bell to get notified anytime new episodes come out on our YouTube channel. And to stay on top of upcoming episodes, check us out on MBAwaves.com. Thank you so much. Happy interviewing. Good luck.
Good luck.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.